everybody. Everybody. There is currently 0 as our everybody, but that's okay. Today we are going to be talking to the lovely Lisa.
Hello.
Lisa is coming to you from lovely Canada, Edmonton, right?
Yep.
Edmonton, Canada. That's why she has the lovely little fire behind her.
We have no snow, so we're good. We're good right now.
I'm in Vermont right now, and we had our first snow a couple days ago. The trees were very frosty this morning. I had to take ice off my car already. So
no, I think the truck has to get scraped off in the morning. Thankfully, I park in the garage, but my husband, I think, scrapes his truck. But we don't have white stuff on the ground, so we are very thankful. It is the 5th of November, and we're just going to keep trucking.
And Lisa, where did you meet your husband?
I met him while working on board in the beautiful Mediterranean. Yeah.
So for those watching, you have 2 people that found their husbands while working on cruise ships.
Yeah. There are lots of us out there.
There are. Yep. Not all ship romance is like below deck. Some of it is, the real stuff.
Yeah.
Well, below deck is real stuff. It's just real. I mean, it's the drama that it's like the early cruise life drama.
Totally. I mean, I don't know about yours. Mine started as that end of contract, see you, peace out. Who knows if I'm going to see you again? And here we are 11 years later.
Yeah.
11. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys have been together because, you were married. So Lisa was my very first roommate on a cruise ship. Well, not my first roommate. We were roommates my second week on board. She was my first buddy on a cruise ship, and I started working on ships it was 10 years ago this year. And you were already married at that point.
I was, yeah.
So, yep, you were married nearing the end of your cruise ship life, and I was like 22, and woo!
Complete opposite ends of the spectrum. I think that was my last contract. So
yeah, well, and what a good way to end with me.
Right. End with the best.
Yes. So today we're going to be talking about Alaska. So Alaska is, in fact, where Lisa and I met in Seattle one morning, and I was all excited. And she was like, "You're going to Alaska." And I was like, "But it's Alaska." So for crew members, there's kind of like a joke that's like all cruise ships lead to Alaska. It's a huge cruise destination, and it is a huge cruise destination for very real reasons. It's incredible. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. There's a lot to see. It's also somewhat close to home. If you're from the US, Canada, kind of the North American side of things, it's not a long flight to be able to go. You might be able to drive there. And it's still, you can use your US cell phone. It's US money. So there's a bit of familiarity, especially if you're new to cruising, that is kind of nice. And then also, it is beautiful. So
you explained it all right there, just super fast.
I've thought a lot about Alaska, and I'm so surprised by how much I miss it. I miss cruising. It's now 2 years since I've been up because of 2021. I wasn't up there at all this year. And then last year the season had been canceled. So yeah, I'm missing Alaska. I need my Tracy's Crab Shack fix.
Yeah.
Have you been there since Tracy's is now part of just a full building? It's not actually a shack anymore.
I might have a confession that I've actually never been to Tracy's Crab Shack.
Okay, where's your go-to in Juneau then? Where's your go-to the meal that just or are you just do you order Bullwinkle's pizza and then?
No, well, I don't know the name of. We typically would go to the pizza place in the the wharf building. I can't even think what it's.
Yeah, yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
That or. I mean, to be honest, we were always probably Filipino food shopping when we got off. So it was the little,
true. Yeah,
those little things. But I don't know. Maybe I was one of the few that didn't always get off the ship to eat, or it was more like running around errands or like getting that stuff done. And it was just.
I have actually found that for running errands, Ketchikan was great. Like I really love, like there's like my go-tos in Ketchikan, but in Sitka, I really turned Sitka into like which is so random because there's like nothing in Sitka, but like there's a little pharmacy. I'd get my photos printed there to like decorate around my cabin.
I feel
And
like you and I went on like a hike
uh-huh.
to like the grocery store, neither one of us knowing where we were going, like
Yeah.
one of the Sitkas, and with my hiking backpack on and like loaded it up with everything, walking back through town.
I think you also took me to Fred Meyer for the first time.
Maybe.
Okay, so I'm very curious who, like, I've seen like a one pop up and then go away. So I'm super curious who has popped in and then been like, eh. And then
Who are these crazy ladies talking?
There's a chance Stuart has his coffee break in the afternoon. So if things go well, he might pop in at 3:00. So.
Alrighty.
Okay, so let's pull up an itinerary and then we'll chat about it. Okay, so all of the itineraries we're going to take a look at today are all sailing in 2022. So these are all for next summer. And so that everyone can get excited about it. Okay, so the first one we're going to look at is through Celebrity. So we've got a variety of cruise lines that we're going to look at as well. This one has a variety of different dates, but that are sailing the same itinerary. But, and it has a little, I don't know if you can see the action. It has it's guiding you. So this one would be considered the outside. So it says inside passage, and I always find this so deceptive on itineraries. I don't know about you, Lisa, but to me, the inside passage is really when you head out from like Vancouver and then make your way in between like Vancouver Island and the mainland.
Yep.
So like on this map, it's showing, you have a little bit on your way up to Ketchikan that's inside passage. But to me, that's kind of just giving you a taste of it. And it's not giving you as much of that experience as I would want if like inside passage was what I was really looking for. This would not be the itinerary that I went for.
No. You're definitely way more out sea, a little bit more. To me, inside passage was always, you couldn't always see land, but almost always could see land. Somewhere there was something to see.
Right. There was, and I certainly, there's joy in being like out in the ocean and, not being able to see any land. But when you're sailing this particular, beautiful part of the world, when you can see land, if you have some binoculars, you might be able to see bears or eagles, or, I feel like I saw quite a lot of whales on the inside passage section.
It was my very first contact we did from Vancouver inside passage, and we would stop, and we called it a ghost town, I guess, on the way up, and our captain would sit and spin the ship for a good 10 minutes. So everyone on the ship could see the things he was talking about. And that was one of those things like, hey, we're just hanging out, but you're so close, you could see it. It was a neat little thing to see. So that to me is definitely inside passage versus being on the outside.
Yeah. So if you're someone that's looking for a cruise to Alaska that has inside passage, I would look for most likely a Vancouver departure, just because I think you're going to get a bit more of it. The other part is that itineraries change. I've had a cruise where someone was expecting the inside passage, so the bit that's shown on this particular map, where this little section in here below Ketchikan, and Ketchikan was canceled. Different itineraries, things happen, and this particular one, Ketchikan, was canceled. And so we didn't end up cruising this. We sailed basically from this kind of Endicott Arm area from south of Juneau. We went out and we were sailing outside, and they were super disappointed. So avoid disappointment. Book the cruises that are going to give you the most of the thing that you're looking for the most. Now, that is not to say that this is a bad itinerary. It's not. It's fabulous. It's Seattle round trip, which is lovely. You're going to be stopping in Ketchikan, which we will chat more about as we go through this. Ketchikan is a great city. Ketchikan's a great town. Maybe we shouldn't call it a city.
Well, maybe it's a city now. It's a city in the summer. Maybe.
It's a city in the summer, and by Alaskan standards, I mean, with the exception of like Anchorage. Anchorage is, their biggest city, which is, I mean, I'm from Vermont, so my variation on cities is pretty similar to Alaska. But then we stop in Juneau and then Skagway. And Skagway, you don't see on a lot of round trip Seattle itineraries.
No.
Which is kind of fun. I like Skagway. You get the train. It's kind of just a nice little small town, very pretty. Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite stops.
And then Endicott Arm on this one is the glacier stop. So pretty much every Alaskan cruise itinerary that you see, at least a week long, there are some like 5-day cruise itineraries that you'll see that say like Alaskan Explorer, but they mostly just go to like Ketchikan and back. So pretty much anything that's a week long, you're going to have at least one day that you're looking at a glacier. Those are usually Endicott Arm, it might be Marjorie Glacier and Glacier Bay. It might be Tracy Arm. It might be Hubbard Glacier, but typically there's going to be one day where the purpose of that day is to go and look at a glacier. That might not sound super exciting, but I've probably been on 100 Alaskan cruises at this point, and every single glacier day, I still go out. If it's raining, whatever it is, I still go look at it because there's something just so magnificent about it.
Absolutely. My favorite day, hands down.
Yeah, and I always was, so like on a glacier day, if you go to walk inside and you can see the reflection of the glacier on the glass of the door you're walking through, and it still like catches your breath how beautiful it is. Even in that reflection, I'm like, it was so cool. And of course, most of the time we were up there, we were getting paid to be there too, which was like, this is
even better, right?
This is the coolest. I mean, yeah, that was my intro to working on cruise ships, was like, okay, let's go look at a glacier. And I was like, okay.
As I remember having to coerce some small people to go out, like, but it's raining. I'm like, but we're going to look at the glacier. Like, my favorite day, we're going outside. And
yeah. So Lisa and I both worked for the kids department on board, and yeah, trying to get the kids excited about looking at the glacier was always sometimes a little challenging, especially if the weather wasn't great. But I'd say a good chunk of them appreciated it. I mean, not every single one, because kids at that age aren't necessarily going to appreciate the natural beauty in front of them, but sometimes. Okay, so this is on Celebrity. Celebrity Solstice, so that's not one of their super new ships, but it's also not one of their old ships. And yeah, a couple days at sea, and we have the lovely stop in Victoria. Now, Lisa, do you know why we stop in Victoria?
Well, actually, Iris, I do. Now that we think, is the Jones Act, isn't it? What it's actually called? Or
so it's technically not called the Jones Act. It is I should remember this. I have a blog post about it.
I know. And
so the Jones Act is kind of the generic term that basically everybody uses for it, but in like the real cruise world, like if you get really into it and you call it the Jones Act, people will quickly correct you. So for right now, we'll just refer to it as the act that makes it so that cruise ships have to stop in a foreign port.
Yeah, there we go. So I'm very glad to see that most of them now use Victoria. I know back in the day, NCL used to use like Prince Rupert and some of our smaller coastal BC towns, which are still cute little towns. But I mean, Victoria, there's nothing compares to Victoria.
It's so fun. I love it.
And I always kind of laugh. I'm like, they unfortunately, they choose the worst timing to stop in such a quaint, beautiful little town. Typically, most of them, it's a Saturday or a Sunday night, arriving about 6 o'clock, which, I mean, Victoria isn't a tourist town like Alaska, where things stay open all day till the ship arrives, ships go, Alaska's open. So unfortunately, a lot of like the downtown culture of Victoria is sort of lost because most things would close up about 5 or 6, except for the big touristy things you go out. But to me, it was still it's still absolutely worth going to see. There's still definitely things worthwhile. And it's just such a cute, cozy little harbor town, kind of a little Alaska-y on Vancouver Island. Like, yeah.
Yep. You've got Bouchard Gardens, and you've got the Parliament building there, which is really pretty. The Empress Hotel. I never did the afternoon tea at the Empress Hotel, mostly because we were on, itineraries that will get there at, about 6 p.m. or so. And when that happens, you just, you're not going to get a full day in Victoria. But over the years, I've gotten to do quite a lot. But yeah, the departure, that one's always been a little bit. I was on an itinerary once where we had a full day in Victoria, and that was fabulous. So, okay, the next one we're going to look at, let's take a look at, we'll save that one. We'll head northbound. Okay, so this is on Princess. This is on, oopsie, watch out for that. This is on, pardon me, their Majestic Princess. This is actually one of their bigger and newer ships, heading out of Vancouver. So on this particular map, I want you to take a look just down near where it has Vancouver, and you see the two different lines. And so you see the one solid line that says Inside Passage, and you see how that heads up in between Vancouver Island and the mainland. And then you see the other line that is heading on the outside of it with a dashed line. So this one would actually be taking you outside of that Inside Passage. I like that Princess notes it like this so that people have an idea of what they're getting, though.
Yeah.
So this particular itinerary, we're starting in Vancouver, and it is northbound. So with these, you have northbound and southbound, as you would guess. One is heading from Vancouver north, and the other is heading from either Anchorage. Most of them actually don't dock in Anchorage. Sometimes they do, but it's either like Whittier or Seward, and then heading back south. And Lisa, why do cruises do this?
Again, it would be the foreign arrival and departure. So because you're leaving from Vancouver, that's your departure, right? So you're in our lovely country of Canada, so that's not your American one. And then you carry up on your American ports and you're good to go. But if you're starting in Alaska, you need to get that foreign port. So although you're not really stopping, but you're ending in Canada, that allows you to do it.
Yes. And the other thing that sometimes people will do with these is they will do overland excursions. So if they are heading from Vancouver north, at the end of their cruise, they might do a tour up to Denali National Park. And if they are heading southbound on it, maybe they have done the Denali portion to begin with. So if you want to have a little bit more of Alaska, a little bit more of the land time, if you've seen the videos with the trains with the big glass on the top of it, an itinerary like this is one that you would likely be looking for and or directed towards by your travel advisor.
This was one of my first contracts, was the northbound, southbound.
Northbound, southbound, up and back. And then with the northbound, southbound, you always ended up doing U.S. immigration, because the whole ship would have to do, or I mean, I guess maybe I'm just thinking of the crew side. But you have to do immigration at some point, right?
We would have done it. So
would you like on this itinerary, would you have to do immigration of some sort in Ketchikan?
Yes.
Right? Yeah, you would.
Our first American port, we would have done, which I actually really liked, because the Seattle ones, I feel like we didn't do it again until we got back to Seattle, because we had never stepped in a foreign country. So as a non-American crew member, depending who was on the gangway, I could maybe push my luck, because as a Canadian, I'm eligible to get off.
Right.
Whereas other nationalities would not be able to get off without their crew.
That's true. Yeah. So crew members. So if you're not from the U.S. or Canada and you join a ship that's sailing anything to do with the United States, you will have had to have a certain visa, typically something that's like a C1D. to get into the United States. But then once you're on the ship, to be able to get off the ship in a U.S. port, you need another, stamped piece of paper from immigration called an I-95. And so if, you're on a week-long U.S. or like a week-long the Seattle itinerary, you're not eligible to get that I-95 until after you've left the U.S. and then come back in, basically. So that particular one, your whole first week, you wouldn't be able to get off the ship except for in Victoria on the last itinerary we looked at. So for a crew member, doing these ones can be a little bit better if you're not from either US or Canada.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so this one, Vancouver, Ketchikan, Juneau, Skagway. So practically identical itinerary in terms of the ports to the last one we looked at. This one has scenic cruising on 2 different days, though, so that's kind of nice. You've got Glacier Bay and you've got College Fjord. So yeah.
This one, my little recommendation would be if you are the elder variety, these ones weren't always the best. We ought or have more complex medical concerns. This was often the one I would say almost every other northbound cruise, we had to do some sort of medevac in College Fjord because of the 2 days at sea versus a 1 day and things like that, which was mind-boggling to me as 21-year-old being like, what, we're offloading people on a cruise ship? But depending on the cruise line and the clientele for them, the 7-day northbounds were not as recommended for those that might be a little bit more medically fragile.
Yeah, so if you're someone that you're thinking, you're in a situation where you might need to get ashore, I will say cruise lines will do everything they can. If they can't treat you medically on board, cruise ships all have a medical facility. They have doctors, nurses on board. But if they were to need to get you off the ship, it's obviously easier if you are in port to do that versus having to, helicopter you off, which is another thing that I don't even know how many helicopter evacs I've seen, but yeah, good thing to think about. Otherwise, I think this is a lovely itinerary. It looks like you've got Ketchikan is a slightly shorter day, so that's a 3 o'clock departure. So if you have a port in particular that you're really excited about, I wouldn't necessarily just take that you see the dot on the map. I would take a look at what time they are because it does take time to get between all these different ports. And so like Juneau, that's a good chunk of time, 8 a.m. until 9 p.m. That's great. But a 3 o'clock departure in Ketchikan, I know I've done 1 o'clock departures in Ketchikan. It can be relatively short if you're trying to pack in a few different things.
I was just thinking the same thing. I said I kind of like this one because it's not a full day, but it's better than that 1 o'clock departure when you're trying to get to Victoria.
Yeah, no, all aboard at 12:30 in Ketchikan was always. It was literally, at that point, it's just you just hop off the ship and do something, or do something real quick, or you just, if you have the morning off, you're just like, I'm just going to sleep and do laundry.
Yeah. I always, my first few ones into Victoria, I enjoyed watching because that was the one port. Cruise ships don't have the luxury to wait for people if you're not back on time, but Ketchikan was absolutely there's no waiting. Like our lines are up at 12:45. We're pulling away at 1 o'clock because we need to get there. And there was always a welcome party in Victoria of whoever had not quite made it to Ketchikan the day before. And it was always refreshing.
So if you were to miss the ship, in a port, you're not totally stranded. There's something called a port agent. And the cruise ship will hand the port agent your passports. And then when you inevitably come to the ship or realize the ship's not there, they'll give you your passports. And, I'm not sure to the extent that they're going to assist you. Obviously, that's a good time to have travel insurance. But you won't be trying to go without your passports. The cruise line will get your passports ashore the best they can. Also, even if that doesn't happen, it's good to have a copy of your passport with you for travel purposes. Okay, the next one we're going to look at is Royal Caribbean. Part of the reason I chose this one is because it's only $394, which for a week-long cruise, I think is a pretty good deal. I mean, there's a lot of itineraries that are a lot more expensive. This one seemed pretty reasonable. It's also a round trip out of Vancouver. So a lot of times the Vancouver ones are heading either northbound or it's southbound. This one happens to be round trip on a 1-week cruise. So this one is from Vancouver, Inside Passage. I think this is actually going to be sailing that Inside Passage in between Vancouver Island to the mainland. Then we have Sitka. This is the first itinerary we've seen with Sitka. Sitka is a lovely little town. It's where I would buy my yarn. If you're feeling really cool, it's got a nice Ben Franklin store. I hope it's still open. Otherwise, there's also the Fortress of the Bears. There's a lovely totem pole park. And then there's a fair amount of Russian history in Sitka as well. There's a church there. And then there's also a cultural center. Sitka.
Sitka was a good, I don't know if it's changed over the years because, a lot has changed, but that was one of my favorite places to go because the whole city in theory was Wi-Fi enabled. So you weren't hunting down that coffee shop or that restaurant. You could in theory sit on a park bench and have Wi-Fi, which was for us always important.
Yeah. No, and I mean, overall Wi-Fi and cell phones, that's all progressed a fair amount.
Yeah.
Over time, but yeah, Sitka was definitely a good port for that. And it's not a tender anymore. I don't know when the last time you were in Sitka was, but they have a dock now, but then you have to take a shuttle bus.
Well, see, I've been to Sitka, many times, but I've always tendered it, except for one time we did a 10-day from Vancouver and we came around the opposite way into Sitka and docked.
Yep.
And so I was like, how long has this been? Like, it was like mind blown. That would have been 2014. So that might have been the last time I was there, but I just wasn't sure if we only stopped because we had the extra time to go around, whereas on a 7-day cruise you wouldn't.
So since I've been there, I was there in 2016, 17. Well, let's see. I was in Alaska 2011, 2012. Both of those years, I'm pretty sure were tenders.
Yeah.
And then I'm pretty sure post 2016, it was docked. So it was probably right in that, middle range, like that 2014-ish that they decided to start having people do the shuttle bus instead. I have a fun story about Sitka and tenders though. So there was one time that the captain called the entire entertainment department to the auditorium, to the show lounge, and we all figured we were in trouble. And he was like, okay, you are the only US citizens that work on board or in the entertainment department. We need someone that can tie off the boats. I guess there was something with like they needed US citizens to work tying off the boats tendering in Sitka. And so as a random little extra thing, which I did get paid extra for, which was sweet, I wore like the whole like khaki outfit. I had the life jacket, the life jacket that goes under and up and around and whatnot. And then I had to tie the boats off because I was a US citizen. So I was eligible to work on US soil. So
a little bizarre, but totally awesome.
Yeah. I was like, it was like decent extra money that I was getting paid. And I was like, okay, sign me up for as many shifts as I can.
We once had a ship lose their anchor in Sitka.
Oh, interesting.
So they had to, their week before they had lost it. And so what they were sistering up with us, anchoring, I guess, but it was the retrieval process trying to find their anchor.
The random things that happen on ships.
Right? You never know what's going to happen.
You never know what's going to happen. All right. And then next up is Juneau, then Skagway. Skagway is only till 3:00. Haines, Alaska. I've only been to Haines, I don't know, 2 or 3 times maybe. Definitely, it's a small town. I don't actually think I went on any excursions there.
It's shocking to me that they have them both in the same itinerary because typically
Skagway and Haines.
Your Haines, I mean, when I did it, we did, so northbound, we would stop in Skagway, southbound, we would stop in Haines, because we had a lot of people that did both. So Haines was a different port, but still offered, most of them were the Skagway excursions.
And the fact that they have both of those, but not Catch a Can on this one is a little.
And back to back, like to me, that's like, I mean, literally it takes 15 minutes maybe to sail from Skagway to Haines. Like it's not, but there's the Hammer Museum in Haines. Like you can't go wrong with the Hammer Museum.
Oh, I mean, that's what I've been missing in my life is the Hammer Museum.
Yeah.
And then you've got Tracy Arms. So that is your glacier day. That's the day that you're going to be checking out some glaciers. And then one sea day, and then back to Vancouver. So, I mean, I think for $400, $394, this is, I mean, I would take this itinerary for that. It's on Serenade of the Seas. So that's one of Royal Caribbean's smaller ships, but very elegant looking ship. I like the lines on her. Oh, hello, Lou. Hi, Lou. Hi, Lou.
And this minus the Haines, this is one that I've done with my family when we cruise as a family, simply because, I mean, for me to get to Vancouver is an 1.5-hour plane ride or a 12-hour drive, which we have done. Most of our family, when we go on big family trips, are from Vancouver and the Lower Mainland. So for them, it was just a matter of the cruise price. So it was anytime we did big group family cruises, we've always done the round trip Vancouver because it was just walk on, walk off and easy to go. So it's one I know very well.
Lou is saying, and they say that romance is dead at sea. It is not dead at sea. It is alive and well. It actually, romance at sea totally spoils you. I mean, my husband and I got engaged in Bora Bora, and then you have like kind of normal life. And it's like, I mean, like you go on a date in Bora Bora and Sydney, Australia, and you have dinner on the beach in Bali. And then you have like a normal night on like regular life where you're like, I guess we're going to go to dinner and a movie.
Totally. Mine weren't as extravagant as that. We did, really it was Alaska. We didn't really do much in the Med together. At that point, it was still figuring it out. So it was Alaska. We'd go ashore in Alaska. Yeah,
but then you guys, I mean, you got married or you had a reception in the Philippines as well.
We got married in the Philippines. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've done the international adventures.
Yes.
Yeah, I was lucky because, I mean, we were on the ship that did a lot of grand voyages and things like that. And so, I had a couple years where sailing a spouse on board, we were on the world cruise, which is a very good place to be a spouse on board. That's a great place to be a +1.
You can sign me up for that one anytime.
Yeah, are you gonna come be on our couch?
Sure, why not?
You'll leave your 3 kids at home.
In a heartbeat, if I could do the world cruise, I'd be gone tomorrow.
The new ship, the ship that he's on now, isn't the world cruise ship, so yeah, gonna have to have him put in for a transfer.
Yeah.
just
might have to trade him for someone else.
Just kidding. Actually, if it goes the way it's supposed to, next summer it might go to Iceland. So I'm excited for that because I haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
Lou is saying that he's a little behind possibly on the actual live, but he's going to keep watching and catch up. Thank you, Lou. Thanks for checking in. I'm excited that you've done Alaska 4 times. I love Alaska. Okay, so this itinerary we're looking at is on Carnival. And it's round trip out of San Francisco. So I included this one. Carnival's not the only cruise line that's sailing round trip out of San Francisco to Alaska. I know Princess does, and maybe someone else does. But it is starting to be a little bit more common to be able to hop on a cruise in California and then make your way up. This is going to have more days at sea just because it takes longer to get from California up the coast and up to Alaska. But a great opportunity if you don't want to fly, or maybe you want a couple days at sea to chill, go to the spa, hang out by the pool, just enjoy relaxing on a ship. I mean, I, as a passenger, quite like sea days. So
yeah,
All right, so departing from San Francisco, which of course has the iconic Golden Gate Bridge, and then as you're going to see, there's a couple days at sea, and then this has a stop in Icy Strait Point. So we haven't had an Icy Strait Point on the itinerary yet. Did you ever stop there, Lisa?
I haven't. I feel like when the few times I got close, we just it was like a sail by. I don't think we were stopping there back in 2007.
Yeah, this seems to be a port that has popped up a lot more in recent years. So Icy Strait Point is definitely a small town, but it also is. I mean, it's small. It is very beautiful. It has maybe the world's longest zip line. It has a very big zip line, but it's very peaceful. Like you can go out and sit on the beach, and I've seen whales do the bubble feeding, I think it's called there.
Yeah.
So it's not a port where it's going to be like the most happening big city adventure of your life. But if you know that going in and just know this is going to be a place where, we're not going to be shopping for diamonds. We're not going to be,
it's your true Alaska. It's not your tourist Alaska.
Yeah, you're not going to helicopter onto a glacier that particular day. But if you just take in the peaceful serenity of where you are, you will love and appreciate that port.
I feel like this was even longer ago, but I feel like we might have stopped there when we did our Japan to Vancouver cruise.
Yep.
It might have been, I feel like it might have been one of those smaller places we stopped for a little bit.
Yeah, just a little stop to say hello. Yeah, that's another way to cruise is doing repositioning cruises between the different continents. Very fun. When I was sailing we sailed San Diego and we were supposed to stop in Dutch Harbor, Alaska, before making our way to Japan, but we missed the port. And so we ended up with 10 days at sea. Yeah. I wasn't sailing a spouse on board for that either. I was working. It was a lot of sea days. All right. So then next we have Juneau. Nice long day in Juneau, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. When I was just talking about helicoptering onto a glacier, that I have done that. I did that in Juneau, probably 8 or 9 years ago at this point. But that's a great place if you want to do something like that. The Mendenhall Glacier is the big glacier that people go see there, but there's a ton to do. You can go ziplining in the forest. You can go salmon fishing. You can just spend the whole day walking around town, and can't go wrong with Juneau. Juneau's a good port.
They put on a good 4th of July parade too.
I haven't been there for the 4th of July.
Yeah, they do a pretty good. And it's then depending which dock you dock at, if you're able to be right downtown, you could just watch it right from the side of the ship. It was quite nice, but we were down in the flow, fury of it all. And
so in Juneau, there's 4 or 5 docks, but there's like 2 or 3 that are like pretty close to right downtown, and then there's one that's kind of further out. None of them are bad. You can get into town and everything from all of them, but a couple of them are definitely a little easier. The ones that are like right down by where the library is, the bus station. Also, Juneau has public transport. They have a bus system. If you want to go to the Mendenhall Glacier, you can take the public bus. If you want to go to the Alaskan Beer Company, you can take the bus. If you want to go to Fred Meyer, you can take the bus. There you go. Takes a little longer, but it'll get you there. All right. Then we have Skagway. We have Tracy Arm for the lovely glacier gazing day. A fun day at sea. And then you have a little bit longer in Victoria on this one, and it's during the day.
Daytime, yeah.
So 8 a.m. till 2 p.m. So that's a good chunk to be able to enjoy Victoria. Where you dock in Victoria, it is a bit of a walk to get downtown, or you can, they usually have a shuttle bus that you have to pay for. I'd say it's about a 20-minute walk downtown-ish.
Yeah.
Something like that, about 20 minutes. definitely worth it. And especially if it's during the day and, it's a pretty walk. So, but there are shuttle buses that will take you downtown as well. And then you have a nice day at sea, which is kind of nice to end on a day at sea, I think, on a cruise, because you have your last day to, have dinner, like have a nice dinner with people that you met during the cruise. Kind of a chance to just relax. You're not trying to rush to pack and go ashore on your last night. And then arrival in San Francisco, which if you have sailed under the Golden Gate Bridge before, it's lovely. So, all right, Alaska round trip, and this one is 10 nights and was $989. So a different price point than the Alaskan one. It's about twice as much. It is a few days longer, so there's that to go from. Okay, let's see. I have. All right, the next one we're going to do is on Holland America Line. I love a 14-night Alaskan itinerary. It is my favorite. Did you ever get to work on one?
Not the actual 14-day. We just say the back-to-back one, so the 7 and 7. But
so I got to do a season of a similar itinerary to this, and it's really lovely because you get a little bit more time in port. You get up into Anchorage and Kodiak, which I wonder if there's a map view. Okay, let's look at the map view for a second. Oh, come on. There we go. Okay, so this is really giving you a taste of more than the Southeast Alaskan region. So out in Kodiak and Anchorage, you actually are in a city, which it's interesting to see that side of Alaska as well. I haven't been to Valdez. I'm a little disappointed Homer's not on this. I always liked going to Homer. I thought it was a really cute little town. Kodiak is very much a fishing place, which is great. Delicious fish and chips there. And then you have Glacier Bay and
Prince Rupert.
And Prince Rupert. There we go. It's back. And you have scenic cruising. You have the Inside Passage. This is, let's look at the list view again. So I like this because it feels very relaxing. You've got some time at sea, and you get to see a little bit more. It's, if you've done an Alaskan cruise where you're heading up and back, where you're doing, PVSA, the Passenger Vessel Services Act. Thank you, Lou. Lou, hold on. We're going to check in with Lou for a second. Oh, Princess. You did the train up there. Wonderful. Passenger Vessel Services Act. Thank you, Lou. Yeah, so these, the longer itinerary, I feel like you just kind of get to enjoy the cruise a bit more. You get to know the crew a bit better, and then you're also getting to see a little bit more, and none of it feels quite as rushed. So like you've got, some 8 p.m. departures, which is nice. 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., another nice long day till 8:30 p.m. Sitka is, you arrive at noon, but an arrival at noon is kind of nice because then you're going to see a bit more when you're outside. The other thing is, I never realized how the difference when you go just that little bit further north, which you also experience when you do the northbound, southbound, when you are there, like right around the end of June, it stays light so late, which is so cool.
Yeah.
And then, Ketchikan, 1:30 till 9 p.m. That's pretty good.
That's a good one.
And then the lovely little Prince Rupert. So I love a little 14-night itinerary.
I love that they throw Prince Rupert in there, and not that they need to, right? Like it's departing from Vancouver, so they don't even need Prince Rupert.
Yeah.
But it's a cute little bit more rustic, coastal town.
Yes. There's one other itinerary that I wanted to share that didn't open. So I'm going to take 2 seconds to open it. And while I'm doing that, we're going to talk about what was your favorite itinerary that you ever, or not your favorite itinerary, your favorite excursion that you ever did.
See, this is where I'm a terrible person. I didn't do a lot of excursions in Alaska. To me, it was more so just the home mountain, because I'm also a little bit of a chicken. I would not get on a float plane. I would not get in a helicopter. Those things, I'm not brave enough. I don't love getting on a plane to begin with. So getting on those was never an option for me. One day, maybe when I'm old and, you know.
And you're just like, I've had a good life. I'm ready.
Yeah. But one of my favorite ones would have been, like, it was a neat, I guess it was kind of a team building one. We did whitewater rafting from Mendenhall Glacier. So I don't know if they offer it as a normal excursion, but it was a crew excursion. So there were 8 of us from our department, and we all got in this little raft with the hip waders and everything and went whitewater rafting down the little river from Mendenhall, and like brought us right up to some of the like little icebergs that are broken off the glacier, and you could like touch them and check them out and see them, you know, up close and personal, and then just carried on. And that was 10 years ago.
Awesome. Yep.
But that was one of my favorite ones. I mean, I'm also easily, I don't know, I love just taking the tram up in Juneau and going for that little hike up there and just getting into nature and being around, like something that, unfortunately, the tram isn't cheap. Like that still is a costly experience, but just something like that, just to get out and enjoy the great outdoors.
Yeah. So I have done a couple of I have done the helicopter one. I have done the float plane to the Misty Fjords in Ketchikan. And those were both incredible experiences. I think that it's interesting. I'm kind of going the other way where I'm a little more nervous now than I used to be. But then and I think it's because I spent a couple partial seasons sailing as spouse on board there. And so I had a lot more time and energy to go on excursions. So when you're sailing as spouse on board or as a crew member, you often, or depending on the company that you work for, you might be able to go as an escort on the passenger shore excursion. So if there was room available, they would have a representative from the company basically go. You get to experience it, but then you're also there kind of in case anything goes wrong. You can help deal with the situation. It's also a way to evaluate the excursions and see how good they are, you know, so you can give feedback to the company. And so I ended up going on a lot of excursions, a lot of whale watching excursions, a lot of bike and brew tour excursions, just a lot of, you know, crab, I don't want to say crab fishing isn't what it's called, but like where you drop the little.
It's crab fishing.
Yeah. Crab fishing?
Yeah.
You drop it down into the water and then you pull it up and you've got the crabs in it, and then you go for a big crab bake and all that jazz. So, yeah, there's a lot of good.
It's funny. It's like, and that was totally a perk, right? You got either free or super cheap. Because Alaska by far is not a cheap place for excursions. And that was, maybe I was also more on the frugal side of things. It was like, I'm saving every dollar that I can make, right? Or going with my family, I'm not paying for 5 kids, or my kids can't go on it, or, you know.
That's true.
So
another thing, if you're a crew member in a place like Alaska, so not everywhere around the world does this, but Alaska, because it is so kind of dependent, expecting the cruise industry, mention that you're a crew member, show your crew ID. And a lot of places have, you know, a 10% discount for crew, or sometimes more. Sometimes it's 10%, sometimes it's more than that. But definitely, if you want to go on an excursion, even if you're getting food, if you are stopping to pick up a new formal shirt for your husband at the Tongass Trading Company in Ketchikan, mention that you're a crew member and you will get a discount. Well, you might get a discount, but it's definitely worth asking, because it happens more than you'd expect.
Keep your old crew cards too. I've had it when I was sailing with my family, and I made a comment in the store. I'm like, it's okay. I'll buy it next week when I get back to the ship. And the shop guy was like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm a crew member, but I'm not working right now. He's like, why'd you do this to me? Just tell me that and I'll help you out. Like, we take care of you guys. So instead of my grandma having to wait a week for me to pick up her Swarovski crystal that week, he just, gave it to us there and then. And
well, and it's really good. I mean, it's good advertising for them because crew members, they're interacting with the passengers every single week. So if a crew member has a good and positive experience at, somewhere that the ship is stopping, then they're more likely to send, the passengers to that stop. So, all right. The last itinerary we're going to chat about, thank you again for doing this. Lovely,
my
Lisa.
pleasure.
This is from Seabourn. And it is a 14-day round trip out of Vancouver. And so the reason that I wanted to include this, it's not because I love Seabourn, because I do. And it's not because it's a luxury line, which it's good to, include a variety. But there are cruises out there that are very much, they're going to take you to ports that you probably haven't been to before. So, this one has Juneau on it. It has Sitka, but it also has the Inuit Islands. It's got stops in, Glacier Bay for glacier gazing, Wrangnall. You do cruising through the Misty Fjord, so you don't actually have to take an excursion to do that. You're just seeing it while you're on the cruise. And so I like to let people know that itineraries like this exist. So if you've done the kind of standard 1 week Alaskan cruise, but you love Alaska and you want to explore it more in depth, there are options that will do that.
Well, that's why I know there's so much more you can do on the big, new, flashy cruise ships, but I guess the world has changed a lot too. The Panama Canal's been expanded and they can do things like that. But it was always, for me, it was nice to be on some of those smaller ships that can get into the smaller, more remote places, because you just can't take, your giant 7,000 passenger cruise ships to the same places. And
no, you really can't. Yeah, you can't take them to the same places. And I think the big thing for me, if I was cruising to Alaska, I'm more of an itinerary person than a ship person most of the time. But I would want to figure out where I'm going to be looking at my glaciers. If I really was into Inside Passage, I'd want to make sure I was on an itinerary that included that. And it is one place that I might be inclined. I want to make sure that I can be outside. So, whether or not that's having a balcony or making sure the ship that you're on has a nice promenade that you can sit on, or if it's one of the ships that has, dining that has outdoor dining on one of the decks or whatnot. Like, I really like being outside on an Alaskan cruise. It's, it's not the warmest. You want to bring your jacket, but yeah.
This one is, or I guess a lot of them are, but it would be one of the few that actually tenders in Ketchikan, which, if you're not a tendering fan, would, put you off of it. But
yeah, I will say that tendering on Seabourn isn't like tendering on most cruise lines, because the ships are so small. It's not like, the longest wait you have is a few, like, it feels like it's just like a couple minutes. And they're fancier tenders than the average cruise line as well.
Well, they can get a little bit closer too, and they can.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely a different cruise experience than some of the other big cruise lines that are out there. And this particular itinerary, so this one's in May. So the Alaskan cruise season is typically, very late April, early May through the end of September. If you are someone that doesn't like kids on board, avoid June, July, and August. You are going to have, even if you're on Seabourn, there will still be kids on this itinerary. Because if it's outside of regular school time, if it's during school vacation, unless you're on an adults-only cruise line, unless you're sailing on Virgin, there's a good chance there's going to be kids. And if you're on, like, in the middle of July, there's going to be a lot of kids. A lot of kids. That's when Liza, or not, oh my gosh, not Liza, Lisa and I met, was with lots and lots of kids in the middle of July.
Yeah, peak of our season.
Yeah, so if you want to avoid that, sail on kind of the shoulder seasons of it. Go for either May or September. The weather is going to be a little more precarious during those months. It is Alaska, so even if it's July, I mean, you might have a 70-degree day. You might have a 40-degree and rainy day.
I've been sunburnt in Ketchikan one day and pouring rain in Juneau the next. You just never know what to expect.
Layers and having waterproof clothing. Yep, and waterproof shoes. Do you know how often people will bring their rain jackets and everything, but then their shoes, they'll go outside with sneakers and their feet will get absolutely soaked.
I never learned that lesson in 5 years. I still had running shoes, but I had multiple pairs, so I was ready to go.
Oh, Lou is commenting that $394 for RCL 7-day is just an amazing price. I agree, Lou. He is a little bit behind us on this, but that's okay. Lou, when you get to the end, we really appreciated you watching and all of your comments. Thank you. So if you had to give one piece of advice to someone that was looking to book a cruise to Alaska, based on all of your experience, you've done a ton of different itineraries, what would it be?
I mean, convenience would be one thing, because we all know cruising is not super cheap. So for me, it would be the convenience of how to get there. So if you are West Coast or something easy, then it would be how to get there. But for me, I guess it would just be like looking at what you want to do. And for me, it sounds really selfish, but Glacier Bay is non-negotiable. For me, if I'm going to Alaska, it has to be Glacier Bay.
So even between like Glacier Bay and like Hubbard Glacier, you're still like, it has to be
Glacier Bay. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So is it because when you cruise into Glacier Bay, it's very scenic cruising on your way in. Is that part of what does it for you versus like with Hubbard Glacier? I feel like that's kind of like it's less of kind of a scenic meander in. It's more of just like a glacier.
Yeah, I think it's the whole day. Like it just, to me, that was the day you were outside. No matter what you were doing, you bundled up, you got your blankets, you got your hot chocolate, you paid ridiculous amounts of money to get the nice big insulated cup that you didn't think to bring, even though you've done it 15 times. And just hang out and be outside and listen to the surroundings. And yes, it's raining. And I mean, listening to the park rangers and their, discussion and just the cultural aspect of it. And it's been a while since I've done Hubbard, so I don't know if there's things that go on with that as well. But it's just having that whole piece and having the Tlingit ladies come on board and talk about some things, and for us provide programming. And at the time, I probably didn't appreciate it as much as I should have, but just that whole, there's a whole day around it, and experience and the scenery. And
yeah, so in Glacier Bay, the cruise ships that sail there because Glacier Bay is a national park, and so they have park rangers that come on the ship for the day to answer questions, and that's not something that you get in all of the other glacier experiences. Like I don't think in Hubbard, I don't remember having a park ranger come on in Hubbard or Tracy Arm. But Glacier Bay, you do get a park ranger that comes on often. There will be, a cultural ambassador for the Tlingit that come on board. And that's a great point. That is a huge difference that I guess maybe I kind of like you, like I didn't appreciate it as much as I could have, just because it was kind of like just my life at that point. But yeah, if it's your first time heading up there, or if it's like you and it's your 100th time, it's still a non-negotiable for you.
Well, it's just nice to know, I love looking at nature, and sometimes it's nice to do it peacefully, but sometimes it's also just nice to be like, hey guys, look over there. This is what you might see. Or just getting, stories. Hey, we can't go closer to this glacier today because the seals are mating and the babies are out. So, but if you look out closely, you can see them sitting on the icebergs, and just like those little things that you would miss if you didn't have somebody guiding you through it.
Yeah. Now, a lot of cruise lines do have someone that works on board that is offering either commentary or information. but I will say it's not the same as someone that works in the park day in and day out.
So I guess my advice would be bring binoculars.
Yes,
bring
and a good
umbrella. Just be prepared for weather. So have your layers, be able, don't be afraid to get wet. Don't be afraid to be outside. I've packed mitts and, sorry, you guys call them beanies, my toques. I packed it all, minus waterproof shoes. That still hasn't been on my list, but just pack it all and be prepared to be out there. And hopefully you don't need it. And just be outside as much as you can and enjoy it. Leave the bikini at home, bring the rain gear.
Yep, I would agree. My advice for someone, I think, would be everything that you just said, but then also like know who you're traveling with and kind of make a plan with that. So like if you are wanting to go on big fishing adventures, but the person that you're with wants to go diamond shopping, then maybe you should be looking at an itinerary that has Ketchikan on it. Or if you really want to just do some hiking and feel like you're totally at peace in Alaska, then maybe go for one that has, a Haines or an Icy Stripe Point, or a Kodiak on it versus, a Juneau, versus, have something variety in the ports. So I would say that, not all Alaskan cruises are beautiful, but not all Alaskan cruises are for everyone.
No. And I get my other piece would be if you, I guess we don't always plan to be able to go places more than once, but if you can, and you're thinking you may only go once, go big or go home. That was one of the things I learned. My aunt, say we'd been fortunate enough to go on multiple family cruises to Alaska, and we'd never done excursions, never did them. And our last family cruise, she's like, I'm doing it all. I don't know if I'll get back here. So she did the plane through Misty Fjords. She did the helicopter. She did this. She rocked that Alaska cruise. And that was her last time to Alaska. And you never know, because it is such a phenomenal place that if you can afford it and you can do it, go big or go home, because those experiences they'll stay with you forever.
They will. And you can't take it with you when you go. So, no. All right, Lisa. Well, thank you so much for hanging out and chatting about Alaska, the birthplace of our love.
Yes.
My true love, my one true love. The woman that introduced me to a drink called the Wang Wang. How can I live without you?
You can't live without a Wang Wang either. Like, that's like the rite of passage to, I think, working and or sailing on a cruise ship is the Wang Wang.
Yep. If you are on a cruise, you might feel awkward asking for it, but if you go to a bar and ask for a Wang Wang, most likely they will know what you're talking about.
And no two Wang Wangs are the same.
Nope. It's a drink that is the closest I could describe it as like a Long Island iced tea, but with some like fruit punch instead of Coke, and then just don't ask questions.
I always describe it as like, the mat that they pour your shots at the bar. They just pour the drips, the overflows of the shot glass, pour that into your glass with a little bit of juice. And
yeah. But, well, thank you for being a lovely buddy back for me 10 years ago. And thank you for being a lovely buddy for me today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Okay. We can talk, we could do another one sometime. We could talk about the Met or something.
Sure. Whatever.
All right. Well, thank you and have a great day.
You too.
Okay.